Today we'll be replacing the rear main seal and oil pump cover O-ring in a 1972 R75/5. To start with, before you remove the flywheel bolts, you need to block this end of the crankshaft. Flywheel holds these crankshafts in place. Once you remove your flywheel bolts and you try to remove the flywheel, it's not that difficult to bump the crank forward and knock it right out of its journals. If that happens, you're looking at a complete teardown of the engine to repair it. Better that doesn't happen. So you can put a little spacer in the end of this or use a longer bolt. Take this bolt out, use a longer bolt that will stick up, that will press against the cover. Block of wood, put the front cover back on, whatever you have to do, but make sure that is no longer able to move forward before you start fucking around changing bolts and getting the flywheel off. So hopefully the goal by the end of the day is to have the rear main seal replaced, the oil pump cover O-ring replaced. Our oil pan is off right now. I'm going to replace that, and it'd be nice to get the transmission back in this thing today and get closer to getting this engine running. One thing we're going to do today while we're in here, these stock BMW battery cables are just shit, to put it nicely. They're not well made. They're the cheapest wire available in the 70s. I need to replace them with the wire set that I use, that I install to all of these projects. Lets the bike start much easier with less current loss. And the benefit, these better wires are actually less money than replacing the using BMW replacements, which are of the same quality as these. Shit. One way to block the crank: unscrew the rotor bolt until it's loose, push it in. 7mm thick block of wood, 1/4 inch, with some 2-phase tape just to hold in place. Now you can put the front cover back on. Battery is obviously disconnected. You don't ever want to take the cover on or off with the battery hooked up, or you are likely to short out the diode board. So anyway, the cover will only go on this far, but it's holding the crank in place, and you can get a couple screws in here. So we're going to put 3 screws in this. Yeah, it's alright. Get this one started. Good. Now I'll run a longer screw in the bottom. This is just to hold the crank in place while the flywheel is removed. The flywheel's not going to fall right off. So I'm going to heat it a little bit with MAP gas. Couple 100 degrees, give it a couple taps. It's already moved. Let's put a couple screws in it. No, that ain't helping us. Stupid. There we go. It's going. Hold on one second. I want to mark crank to flywheel. I'm going to put a paint line right here. The flywheel should be indexed so it only fits on the crank one way, but just in case. I want to make sure. Actually, use a different color because we've got green on there already from the prior bolts. So look at a paint mark on there and be right back. Okay, we have the flywheel off. There is our rear main seal. That is your oil pump cover, which has a O-ring in it. Those tend to leak too, and none of the dealerships I've ever worked at previously ever bothered to change those. They usually did the rear main seal and sent the customer on their way. So we are changing both. After we clean this up, you can see all the sludge built up, clutch dust, oil. It's a frickin' mess. Well, you have the flywheel off. Besides inspecting it, it's a good time to throw a paint dot for your fully advanced mark, your idle mark, and your top dead center. The OT is where you would have that in the inspection window to adjust the valves. If we look at the flywheel teeth for the starter ring gear, they're a little bit beat up, but not terrible. It is usable. And this flywheel is not indexed. So, fortunately, we put the little blue mark on there. And we still have a blue mark on the crankshaft and tail corresponding with this. So, it'll go back the way it came apart. When in doubt, mark everything. Your oil pump cover, Phillips head screws are in there. You're going to need an impact driver to get them off. See, I can't hold the camera and do this at the same time, so we'll be back. Doesn't take a whole lot. Much easier after people. Especially when you're filming the fucking thing. Screws are out, and let's not let that go turning around. And this is the O-ring where my thumb is. Paper towel over here. Pin that down. Take a little pick. There you go. If you don't have the special tool, the bar that fucking fits across here to lock it in place, you can still get into it with a pry bar. Don't reef on the freaking case. Just get your pry bar wedged in there. You wedge in between the flywheel and the case. You don't need a whole lot of pressure, just enough to stop it from turning while someone else torques the bolts. Go ahead.
Two.
And what's the torque on these?
60 Newton meters.
60 Newton meters.
In a cross pattern. 3.
And you have to remember, these are one-time bolts only. If you have to remove them again, throw them away and put new ones in. These bolts break easy enough all on their own,
5.
just from use. So don't chance reusing these. And that's it. Our rear main seal is done. If you want to be extra cautious and make sure it doesn't leak, at this point you can remove your front cover, take your little block of wood out of the end of the crank, reinstall your carburetors. You don't really need the air filters, but keep a fire extinguisher handy in case when you go to start it, it pops back and starts a fire. If that's the case, keep the throttle wide open and keep cranking. It'll suck the flame back into the engine and extinguish it. But in case you panic, if you're prone to panicking, keep a fucking fire extinguisher handy and know how to use it. I say use it before you try to start this. So anyway, as I said, you can put the carbs on and put the battery in and zing this over and let it run and inspect for leaks. Get a couple cooling fans to keep the cylinders cool. You know, not unreasonable to let it run for, you know, 5-10 minutes. Shut it down, let it cool, start it again for a few minutes, check for leaks. If it doesn't leak overnight, I think you're good to go and you can consider it ready to reinstall a transmission. Right now, at this point, we have oil in the crankcase. Our oil pan is reinstalled. Our carbs are on temporarily. We have fuel going to them. Our plugs are out and grounded because the goal was to crank this over with the electric starter, prime the oil pump since this bike has sat for a long, long time. The issue though, I have my special spare key here. We have headlight, tail lights, turn signals, everything except electric start. At this moment, I don't know why. And it's late in the afternoon and I'm fucking burnt today. I do have this on the schedule for tomorrow, although I was really hoping to have this run today so it could sit overnight and we could make sure the rear main seal, new rear main seal doesn't leak. I don't know. So we have some diagnostic time we're gonna have to be involved with here. Figure out what the fuck is going on with this, because we need this to spin over with the electric starter. It never ends. Alright, we have that issue hopefully resolved. I think we have a bad connection here. Like I said, this battery is just temporary. No, we got a bad connection over here. Somehow, somewhere, some way. We lost it all. Go to a different ground here. That's a better ground. Oh, first time this thing's turned over in at least 10 years. It's a piece of shit BMW battery anyway. We're going to run this thing right into the ground. Wow, not that bad. I don't want to hurt the starter.
Good spark.
Yep, good spark on both sides. Just looking for a little oil pressure. There we go. Got oil on your side?
Yep.
Uh-oh. Button's alive.
Overheating?
Yeah. Alright, we have oil pressure. That's a good sign. We can reinstall the valve covers and proceed with putting this together. Our oil pump is primed. Our valve covers are back on. I have my 2 cooling fans going. The exhaust is off. And we have fuel. Let's see what we get. I think the timing is out on this thing. We didn't even mess with that yet. We have no reaction. Oh, there we go. What'd you do? Just tapped it? Yeah, we still, even this new starter relay's hanging up a bit. Hey, give it a tap again. That's gonna be it for today.